back to SCV Today, and as we've been talking about, we have a drug problem in Santa Clarita, and it's frightening. One statistic that we were talking about just a little bit ago, 19 confirmed overdose deaths in Santa Clarita in 2012. That, to me, is an astounding number, and we're theoretically an enlightened group. We're an educated group, and especially among us parents, we know a thing or two. We've experienced drug use and what happens to people, and yet our children are continuing to die from drug overdoses, primarily from heroin. That's frightening to me.
Right, and I think one of the biggest problems is that we don't know what we're looking at when we see it.
Right.
So we've called in the expert. We've called in Carin Wright, Global Protective Services.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to the program.
Thank
Good
you
to
so
see you.
much.
And so, Carin, I asked you to bring in some things that we might find as parents and might not know exactly what they are. And I was shocked, once again, to find a few things here that I would not have known what they were.
Right.
So why don't we just start down here at this end of the table and just talk about the basics. Now, someone might think if they were to see something like this, they would know what it is.
That's almost obvious.
That's almost obvious, right?
Now, most of the things here are stimulated or look similar to what drugs and drug paraphernalia is. This might be a powdery substance that you find in your child's room or in their pocket or in a possession. It's just kind of to simulate cocaine or an illegal controlled substance. First of all, you'd probably go, oh, well, what's Junior doing with flour or sugar? It's probably not flour or sugar in a Ziploc baggie in their room.
I think that's a massive clue that that's not,
well, I mean, I think
they're not baking in their room.
You would think that an excuse that would automatically come up would probably be, oh, that was for a cooking class or something to that matter. And, and parents, they really are in denial. It's really, I mean, I hear it all the time, even with my friends, like, oh, my child, and I'm like, no, your kid's doing this stuff.
And that would be an outrageous amount for...
Yeah, I was going to say, if
course.
they have this much, they should be paying the mortgage.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
You're moving on up in the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
exactly.
Yes, you are.
Now, this was something when you pulled out, I thought, okay, these are cookies left over from lunch. And I would have taken this out of the backpack and thrown it away.
You would have eaten some of these is what you would have done to start with if they were cookies.
Well, I think this could also simulate what heroin looks like. A lot of times people don't realize there's a color variety of heroin. It could be anything from white to kind of a yellow tint to a brown to a black. And that was kind of just to give you a little example of the brown color that heroin could possibly be.
Now, would they normally have an amount like this?
Like I said, for juveniles, maybe for personal use, they probably wouldn't have that much.
They would probably be carrying it in something like this, correct?
A bindle, yeah, is a very common form of transporting and carrying drugs. And these are just little demonstrations, again, of paper bindles that have been wrapped up to transport drugs. It's easy to stick in your pocket in a small location, and it's not too noticeable.
And you're talking about specifically what's inside of here, not this bag itself, because this is an evidence bag, but this is actually what's inside of that. It's wrapped in newspaper.
Paper, newspaper, a notebook paper.
Sure.
Just anything that they could fold it up into a little tiny container that'll hold it and it won't leak out.
And that's called a bindle.
A bindle, yes.
Okay. And then another way of...
So one of the, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me just
ahead.
ask this question, because going back to the bindles, so if parents go into their child's room and they see perhaps pieces of paper, newspaper, a magazine, whatever, folded into a geometric shape like this, because these are almost perfect rectangles.
Almost look like little mini envelopes, almost.
Right.
And your child is not involved in origami or any creative paper artwork, I would be concerned.
Yeah, okay.
And you know, I'm going to ask you, you have so many years experience with law enforcement, et cetera. Carin, somebody told me, if you're suspecting, the chances are they're already doing it. Don't ask your child, just assume that they are. Would you agree with that?
I think no one knows the child like a mother and a father. If the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, their mood has changed, their behavior is unusual, they are demonstrating symptoms, they're breaking out, their skin's breaking out. It's not just the teenage acne. It's not just hormones for their moods. Their appearance is changing. They're isolating themselves. They're not sharing as much as they used to tell you. And you start noticing things like that. That should put you on alert. It's not always teenage angst that causes the mood change. Well, a lot of times if they're hanging out with people you don't know their names, they're getting strange phone calls, weird hours, staying up late, sleeping in late. things like that should cause you to be alerted. What is wrong? What is going on in my child's life? And I think that will lead you to the direction of maybe there's a controlled substance involved.
We've got a few things like syringes and such, and that's almost obvious. And here we've got a pipe.
That's a glass pipe commonly used for smoking methamphetamine. As you can see, the residue, the burnt residue on the pipe. It takes high heat. Another sign would be butane lighters. There's no reason for your child to be having a lighter, first of all, much less a butane lighter that gives off a little more heat for cooking.
Is that one of the long lighters?
You're thinking of the big ones you get in the hardware store. They actually have mini ones at 7-Eleven or at your corner AM/PM that they can purchase right there.
See, once again, something I had no idea. Now, Dave Caldwell, if you came across a balloon like this in your son's pocket, you would be thinking, oh, the boys were playing water balloons, right?
Or that they went to a birthday party.
Yeah.
Naive.
Actually, that is what a lot of heroin is transported and carried in. The little balloons actually keeps it sealed tight. They can transport it, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, you can even swallow it or insert it into little hideaway body parts that it won't be found. But yes, that's a common way of transporting heroin.
And is this the typical size? I mean, this is like the size of just a small rock, a pebble.
For personal use, that would be probably the size that you would find.
Wow. Okay. And then I want to point out a couple of things here, because we have basically some regular products that I'm familiar with right here, plus a little, looks like a little mini chemistry set. Tell us a little bit about what we have in this segment here.
Well, right here, this was just an example of one of the containers that kids would carry either marijuana or drugs in. It's a bubblegum tape container, something that probably some law enforcement officer came across, happened to check, and inside either found drugs or the child was using it for transportation purposes. How many parents are actually going to look in their child's candy containers for drugs? And actually, it's quite clever if you think about it.
Sure, absolutely.
My children know that I would actually go and eat their candy, so they're too smart for that one. But here's one. This I could think of a little scale.
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
And this would be a sign of a child that would be dealing, correct?
Oh, that's a little more advanced if they have a scale in their room. They're weighing out portions either for sales or maybe just to weigh out personal use portions. But that would be an advanced move, probably someone who's been using drugs for a while or at least selling drugs for a while.
But then mom and dad could think, oh, well, Junior's involved in chemistry. I mean, he's got straight A's in chemistry, and he just likes to experiment.
Absolutely.
He's just experimenting with things that are illegal.
It would actually be even worse if you actually convinced your parents to go buy you the scale. So, yeah, just something, like I said, individually, these things aren't so noticeable. The candy container, the scale on its own. But if you start seeing an accumulation, a combo of things, this should put you on high alert.
Now, I have a friend of mine whose son became a heroin addict. He was using black tar heroin. And I was not aware what black tar heroin was until he told me that it comes in aluminum foil and it is smoked. And you've got some little aluminum foil squares here. Obviously, this is the size that it would normally come in, right?
Come wrapped in, yes. Small squares normally is what you find. It keeps the moisture out, keeps the drug in. And basically, heroin is easy to get because it's cheaper. And you see a lot of the kids starting with the designer club drugs, can't afford to get the pills anymore, the Vicodin, the OxyContin, the pain pills. So they resort to heroin. It's cheaper, $5, $10. You can get a balloon in some locations in some parts of the city. So you usually will either find, if you don't find it wrapped in the balloon, you may actually find it wrapped in the aluminum foil. And
what they're doing with it is, from what I understand, they're heating it from underneath the foil.
They use the foil to heat it and cook it, yes.
Yes, and then it's inhaled.
You can inhale it, you can inject it, you can inhale the smoke. Chasing the dragon is what they call it. Now, I don't know if do you guys remember the John Bon Jovi headlines recently where his daughter was found unconscious from a heroin overdose? And I don't know if it's true, I don't know the exact police reports. She claims she took it in pill form, heroin in pill form. Wow. So I don't know if that's been proven or not.
It's just so scary. And again, if I were to walk into my child's room and see this foil lying on the ground, I would think, oh, that slob took something out of the fridge and left the foil on the ground. Exactly. I would never even dawn on me. Now, something that I really wanted to talk to you about, and I mentioned was spice. And of course, this is just your regular oregano.
Yes.
But this is actually what spice looks like. Spice, so I think generally comes in a packet like this. A
Ziploc bagging, normally.
And it literally, it looks just like, I'm going to put some out here. It looks like spices.
It does, and actually, spice is made of shredded plant components, herbs, spices. What they add, though, is a chemical, usually a spray-on chemical similar to THC, which is the chemical found in marijuana. But the problem is anytime you add a chemical with unknown components in it, it does other symptomology, hallucinations, panic attacks, rapid heart rate. And it makes things happen that the body's not used to dealing with. And that's why spice can be very dangerous. It actually has been linked to suicidal thoughts and actions after a lot of chronic use.
And it is now illegal, because it wasn't illegal for a while, right? Or has it been banned? What is the story behind spice? And
spice, because of its chemical components, I think some of the chemical components have been outlawed.
Okay.
So depending on which state you live in, definitely check with your local law enforcement and find out what the laws are there. Okay. But yes, it is a drug, it's considered a drug, and children should not be in possession or be using them.
You know, I want to ask you a question, and it's kind of unfair because I didn't ask you this before, and I don't know if you have this answer, but we talked about how there have been 19 deaths related to overdoses just in Santa Clarita in 2012 alone. Do we have an idea of roughly a percentage of teens, say in high school, who do use or dabble in drugs? Would it be 20%, 30%, 70%? Do we have an idea? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I want, this whole point of this is to educate parents so that they understand, most likely, little Jimmy and Johnny and Janie and all three of the kids are probably using something.
I don't have an exact percentage for you. I think each community is different too.
Okay.
So it depends on the community. We could get into which schools, which neighborhoods, but I don't have an exact percentage for you here.
And in this community, you'd be really surprised because you would automatically think a certain school is worse than the other, but it's usually the opposite. Yeah. And it's really interesting.
It's where the money is more often than not, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and one thing that we don't have out here is an aerosol can. And I know huffing is a very big deal. And I can tell you there was a time in my house when I was like, every aerosol can is gone because I was so freaked out by it. I'm like, I don't want to. And my 12-year-old loves Axe spray. And I'm like, I can't have Axe in the house. You know, tell us about the effects of huffing and what's the deal with it? I don't get it.
Well, there's a reason why all the spray paint cans are locked up at Home Depot and Lowe's, and that's because children shouldn't have access to it. The huffing or the inhaling of the spray paints, or even, we've heard about liquid paper, permanent markers. You know the little dust cleaners for your computers?
Oh, yeah.
That, anything that's inhaled chemically actually causes a high to the kids. It's fast, you inhale it. You normally will find with the kids that use spray paint actually a ring of paint around their face, or you'll see the paint on their fingertips. There's really no reason why anyone should be walking around with a backpack full of spray paints unless they're graffiti, tagging, or inhaling. It's definitely harmful. It kills brain cells, and it sometimes can even cause brain damage. So, I mean, if you're noticing unusual paint around their mouth, on their clothes, on their fingertips, it's not like they can hide that. All of a sudden they're carrying latex gloves around with them. Things like that are all warning signs.
But then again, something that you can very easily come up with an excuse for, like, you know, art class or something like that. You just have to know your children. You have to know your children, and you have to be on top of it.
And I think Carin brought up the good point of if you see the behavioral change, you know your children better than anyone else. And if you see a behavioral change, that's a big, 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 big flag right there.
Right. Well, Carin, I know we didn't get into everything, but will you come back soon?
Absolutely.
And talk with us a little bit more and educate the community a little more.
And just so the community knows, GPS, Global Protective Services, has a training center here in the Santa Clarita Valley, and they actually have drug identification courses for the community, as well as first aid, CPR, AED, bloodborne pathogens, crime prevention, self-defense classes. So if this is something that you're really interested in and want to get into the 3-4 hour course,
Yes.
The advanced course, they actually offer that to community members.
And we will definitely here at SCVTV be promoting any events that you guys do for the community to educate the community, and we'll actually put a link on our Facebook to Global Protective Services to get all that
Excellent.
information.
And of course, if you need more information, you can always go to our website, scvtoday.com, and we will direct you right over to Global Protective Services.
That sounds great.
Carin Wright, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
It's
It's
very
my pleasure.
informative. We really appreciate it. Very, very important information for not only this community, but then we have a lot of people around the country that are watching on the internet. So this is great information for everybody. Thank you very much,
You're
Carin.
very welcome. Thank you.
When we come back, Rich Green from Green Landscape Nursery. It has been cold. It is going to get warm sometime. So we need to learn a little bit more about what we need